Hey guys, I'm on this video, and today's topic is going to be about marriage. It's about relationships. It's about really connecting with the other person. But what if you have this conflict and you reach this mark where after 10 years of being married to this person, you feel as if the marriage isn't working as the way you think it's going to work? Because things change. As individuals and people, we tend to change and adapt to different things, but we don't really think about things realistically at times too. And understanding, I've heard things from guys' perspective as well as women. And a lot of times you have to understand the nature of what men are going through, because when we don't understand the nature of our own men or the man in our lives, we end up creating this dissension in the relationship that can cause them to want to leave the relationship. Because they've been sacrificing so much. I've talked to some of my guy friends and sometimes meet up with them because the fact that they feel conflicted within themselves, and understand the nature of the confliction that they feel they are being, feeling untreated by their own spouse. They feel mistreated by the way they family ought to be run. I'm not going into details of what I've heard in the conversation because I don't want to divulge all of that. So it's just knowing the nature of trying to really put things into perspective. I mean, if wives can do whatever they want, then husbands can do the same thing. Should be no double standards in a marriage or relationship connection. But there are many double standards, and because of the double standards that women put on their men, or the man in their lives, they feel that they're being treated unfairly. Understand the nature of why the man feels treated unfairly. Understand why they feel as though they are not being understood or cared about. I wonder why infidelity takes place. We have to be very realistic here, and the approach that we take can really make a difference. And understanding women, we tend to do this a lot when we have our emotions get in the way, when we're exhausted, when we feel like our men are not taking action. And yes, we will nag, we will berate, we all do that. But what ends up happening a lot of times when you nag and berate and make their lives miserable, you end up causing them to distance themselves from you. They distance because they don't want to feel, they want things how they want things to go back how it used to be. But realizing that's not going to work, they also have to step up to the plate and start understanding the nature of the situation as well. I mean, it takes two people to make a marriage work. If two people are not coming together to work it out, what often ends up happening? It falls apart. So we have to be very honest about the relationships and understanding if you have in-laws or parents living with you, or the situation at hand, understand how that can be conflicting. I had to be very honest with myself. I live with my folks, and because after I left my Carmania job back in 2015, in 2020, after 4 years of trying to figure all my situation out, it really opened my eyes to circumstances, and I was like trying to understand the nature of what ends up happening when you live with parents or living with in-laws, or they are living with you, how that can cause a rift in the relationship. And I've grown up with parents and grandparents, and they used to live with us, and understanding how that created a relationship rift in the marriage, in my parents' marriage, because it's like the mother or my mom's mom, my grandmother, my mom would often go to my mother, and my mom would relay the message to my dad, and this is when it comes to problem, because my dad doesn't really want to do everything by how my grandparents want it, and there was no real kind of click or communication in that sort of relationship. And understanding sometimes how close my mom was with my grandparents, it was just knowing the nature that my dad was kind of feeling a little bit resentment towards the situation. So what I've watched and what I've seen is the resentment, the wondering why after 8 years of living with us, my dad kicked him out. Because he couldn't, after a year of being with that, and after a year of understanding this, like, he would just keep putting it off. My dad's more passive aggressive in his situation. He's more passive than action oriented in many cases. But really understand the nature of what I've seen growing up, it just really caused more chaos. I'm not saying that there was no peace. There was some certain peace that came across. But understanding the nature that my dad just didn't want to keep, it's like no matter what he did, it was never good enough. It was just like always needing more, or there was always something that was missing, or it was this conflicting situation where my mom created drama out of nothing at times. It was just like, he was just probably wondering, like, who did I get married to, and why did I get married to this person? Understand, when you understand the nature of having kids involved in this situation, your love life is basically stagnant. There is no real love life. I talked to some of my guy friends like this, because I have one of my guy friends who had his parents live with him. I'm realizing the nature of that. And I'm like, I'm just telling you from my own experience here, what I've been through. and realizing the nature of what I've seen, it can really cause problems not with you, but also your wife, also with your children. Understand your children will also take into consideration at the fact that they see what you do, and so what they see what you do, you take into consideration, realizing that's gonna happen. It's like with me and my mother. Like right now, I live with them at the moment, trying to rebuild my life again. Knowing that now I have a car, it took me a while to get that, but that's a different story next time. I had to really understand the nature that my mother was a control freak. She needs to control everything and anything in her environment. My grandmother's the same way too. She's just like her mother in that area. She needs to control everything in her environment. I'm the same way. I need to control my environment the way it is. If I'm organized and cleaned and well kept, that's when I feel a little bit better about myself. Some people can do messes. Like my sister's very good at keeping things a mess. Like, but her bedroom's a disaster the most. But it's just knowing the nature of what I've seen. Like we were raised differently, me and my sister, and understanding my certain traits. Like I'm a control freak. I realized with my ex and I, we had that problem coming together when it comes to relationships. But when it came to my own parents, when it comes to my own son, like when I tried to set boundaries and rules and like limitations, when the 4 years of living with them, I could not do that. I was driving myself crazy, trying to really understand, like, okay, you're telling me one thing, like I'm not taking care of it, and then next you're telling me that that I'm not doing enough for you guys. I'm like, this is why I'm not doing it anymore. Like no matter how much I clean, no matter how much I try to cook, no matter what I do, I give up. Okay, it's never good enough. So what I'm going to do, I need to walk away from this now. So I still live with them, but I'm like, okay, go do it yourself. And then when it ends up happening a lot of times is what I've dealt with is that they complain about me not doing anything because no matter what I do, they complain about it. So it's just like, oh God. So it's about honest approach. It's the honest approach to situations. It's honest approaching to the factors of, yeah, there is going to be some conflict in these types of relationships because the nature of setting boundaries, especially if you are like me, if you're living with your own folk, it's hard to set. It's like when I set my rules and boundaries and limitations with my own son, often ends up happening where they still want to take control. It's like they don't know how to. It's like, you know what? Yeah, and I'm not a parent. I'm not a parent person. But at least I'm willing to admit that. Doesn't mean I'm narcissistic. It means the fact that I just don't see myself as a parent. But now I take on that role as a parent. I'm not saying rules, boundaries, limitations. I have a struggle with this too because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing half the time. We have to understand that when your parents are crossing boundaries, they want to see how far they can go with it. It's like children. They don't want to cross those boundaries to think how far they can go. It's like my son going to my paints, okay, and thinking that he can just do whatever. And I spanked the living, not like day last night, but I spanked his butt and realizing, understanding the nature of the mess on the carpet, oil paint, and doesn't really mix very well. So what I realized is the nature of seeing and putting things into perspective, the nature of really seeing the marriage itself. When you're dealing with marriage, you have to understand the nature. Are you really happy in that relationship with your in-laws involved? Like that can really cause a rift in the marriage. Understanding the factors of the relationship with the in-laws or your parents has to do with them thinking that they can do whatever they want when really they can't. It's just really hard for them to let go of that control because they've been so in control for so long that when children become adults, it's hard to let that go. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's just struggling with this, and I'm just like, I mean, my grandparents live 5 minutes away or less, depending on traffic. But it's like we live in the same town, but it's like they live in a condo that's like 5 minutes away. So. But it was just knowing the nature of this. When I've grown up, what I've grown up with is this harmony, that can be created. Understanding the nature of the wife, particularly, always complaining, always saying something. Their emotions get the best of it. They're not thinking logically. And we have to be very honest. Like, why is it that our emotions get the best of us? Women do this a lot. And I've done it too. I've done it myself. Don't get me wrong. But logically, you're putting yourself in that position where you're not thinking straight. You're putting yourself in a position where you feel like this constant conflict within you. And you often feel like as if there is something wrong with you. And then later on, they play victim when they don't need to play victim in situation circumstances. And women do this often, especially stay-at-home wives who have nothing better to do but to bitch and complain. I'm not just saying this, I've seen it. I've seen it with my own family. And I'm just like, oh. My mother would complain about things, saying she's bored, she's not doing anything. And I was just like, well, get up and do something. Like, I'm the type of person who's be straight out and forthcoming. And I told her, get up and do something about it. Don't just sit around and do nothing. Like as a child, when you're telling your mom what to do, that can be a problem because you can't do much. You're a child. You don't have a car. You can't drive. You're not old enough to drive. You don't have that capacity to do anything. So when you're in that stage, it's like she would create problems when there's you don't need to be a problem because it's what she dealt with. I remember growing up in that stage. But my dad would just be a workaholic because he doesn't want to go home. He doesn't want to go home. He doesn't want to deal with the stressfulness of the home. He doesn't want to deal with anything of the sorts. And I totally agree. Like I would probably do the same thing like he did. I would probably be at work and not deal with a nagging wife or deal with a nagging, spouse who just always saw the negative in the relationship and not willing to be able to see things differently, But there is a difference when you are in a situation where you feel quite conflicted all the time. And that confliction has to do with the nature of the self, whatever you're not dealing with, yourself, it feels as if there is something wrong with you. And because you haven't dealt with the issues. So you have to be very honest when you're going into this marriage and going into this union. If you haven't dealt with your past and your own issues and you're getting into the relationship with a lot of baggage and you expect the other person to fix that issue because the fact that you haven't dealt with your baggage, you're basically putting a burden onto them. The husband or the wife is not supposed to fix your problems. They are there to help you and support you in ways that will help you grow and out of that patterns. But if you're trying to put a lot of pressure and expecting them to fix those things for you, you're going to kick them out the door. And it's a God honest truth. Like I have seen this multiple times with some people, why some people get into divorces. Because these types of relationships are not willing to grow. They're not willing to see the other person's point of view. Or the wife is just being quite lazy and don't really give a fuck. All right? So we have to be very honest about this. I know this kind of sounds mean and harsh, but I want to be straight with you. This is often the case when you go into relationships. This is why relationships needs to be dealt with. This is why I'm like me. I'm not a parent person because I realized I don't want my son to be detrimented by my own actions down the road. It's not a healthy thing. It's not going to help him, develop in a way that will be beneficial. This is why I was thinking about adoption with him because the fact that, I know I'm going off topic, adoption, because the fact that I knew for me when it comes to parenting, I'm not a fit parent. There's people who are out there who are willing to do that. But a lot of people, at least I'm willing to admit it, like I don't have anything to hide about this anymore. But we have to understand the nature when it comes to marriage. You have to understand your mindset and going to marriage. Understanding that when you deal with conflict, understand the nature of what you're feeling. You have to understand the fights that you go into. There are times I will walk past some houses and I see men yelling or screaming about things that their dog did or their husbands feel stressed out. So the husband may be yelling at his kids or their spouses sometimes too. But at the same time, though, it's like, what is the wife contributing to the situation too? Sometimes it may not be. Maybe the husband is just all that stressed out in many cases. I talked to a lot of my guy friends about this too, and about understanding some of them who are divorced, some of them who are married, and I try to get a guy's perspective because I know a lot of women's perspective about the situation. But when it comes to guys' perspective, I'm totally lost until I hear the story. I'm like, okay, now I get it. I mean, I do have we all have both masculine and feminine energy. I do get in touch with my masculine side a lot of times, but sometimes when it comes to emotions, I'm more in touch with my feminine. And when it comes to my friends, they want to be able to feel that connectedness. They want to feel as though they are being loved and cared for, and understanding if you don't show that more in the relationship, they will find somewhere else to go to. This is why infidelity is the highest rate form in our relationship because of the feminism or walk, whatever the case may be. But we lose sight of when we're being too aggressive, or when we lose sight of how we are harming the marriage relationship. When we start to lose sight because we want things our way, that we end up becoming more selfish in that case, and then we don't really take a good look at circumstances for what they are, and analyzing our own or evaluating our own actions that has caused the problems too. Understand what we do, what we end up doing, we end up creating down the road in our future and our kids too, and our kids' lives. So we have to be very honest about this, honest evaluation in the nature of marriage. Don't if you're not married yet, don't get into a marriage if you're not ready. I am 31 years old and I'm not ready for marriage. I am totally nowhere near to get married at all. I'm still in the process of understanding my own emotions. I'm still trying to understand me. I am trying to understand and build a relationship with myself, even though 4 years I've been working on this. But it's a daily process. It's not like an overnight fix. Like, oh, I'm okay now. No, it's things will trigger, things will come up, and you'll be wondering, like, why am I going back to square one again? Because you haven't done the work. When you do the work, you have a better chance at outcome having a relationship that you want in the end. But it's about honest communication, honestly looking at things, honestly being, taking in that, if is your emotions getting the best of you, is your aggravation getting the best of you, are you reacting to situations? These types of questions, easy to answer, but not as always easy, because these are complicated questions we have to be very honest about. Reality check. We have to have a reality check in the end. The causes of having a reality check. Because when we do that, we're like, oh, now I understand why I have this situation, why I'm in this circumstances, what's going on this. But when we honestly evaluate things, we have a better chance of, when we evaluate ourselves, we have a better chance of being able to build that relationship that we want in the end. Healthy connection with our spouse. So we have to be very clear of what it is that we're looking for. Be very clear on why we want to be in this marriage. Be clear. Maybe I'll do a second video on this. We have to be very clear what we're dealing. Be clear on what is we're expecting and setting better boundaries. If you don't set boundaries, this is when my parents never set really good boundaries. So when they didn't set good boundaries, this is when everything got lost in the fog. And especially if you have in-laws or parents living with you, or you're living with them, they will do anything to cross those boundaries, because they think, with my grandparents, even though they're paying half the mortgage in the house, it's not worth it in the end, in my opinion. Because I realize the nature of when you do that and they expect more from you without contributing their side, it can be very difficult. It's just more it's more than what they can actually do. And if you have grandparents who are very entitled mindset, this can create a rift in the relationship, because they are entitled to whatever it is that you're doing. They're entitled to how they're treated, because they're also paying half the mortgage. So I guess again, entitled. But if they're expecting more than their fair share, then there's a problem. And I've learned that over the years, and I've learned over the years why my dad did what he did, because he was just tired of being cornered, or felt as though they were just, it was just very one-sided. And I was just like, I was interesting enough, understanding someone else who was going through the same situation, made it perfectly clear. I was perfectly clear with him that I would have to probably do the same thing. If knowing the fact that if your wife is being stubborn, I know I can be quite stubborn, but if your wife is being stubborn about a situation, thinks she can do all or anything, it can create a problem, because it's just you lose that romance with with your spouse. And I have to be very honest about it, because sometimes when women tend to take on the role as a mother, they use their children as surrogate spouses just to fill the void that they're feeling in the end. And when you're using your child as a surrogate spouse just to fill the void that you're in, then you have a problem. All right. The problem here is that you're looking at the situation so someone else can fill that void for you. If your spouse can't do it, you're going to your children now, and they should fill that void for you. Not gonna work. I know, because I've tried that multiple times, and it backfired it backfired on me. Okay, I was trying to figure an analogy that worked with it, but it backfired on me. So we have to be very, very clear about our marriages, understanding if you're married and you have kids, don't let your kids be a surrogate spouse. Don't let them be the ones who have to take all the burden because of your own trauma and all your burdens that you're carrying. Understand that they have their own life. Let them live it. They don't want to be around parents like this anymore. So we have to be very real about this. We have to be very honest about this. Be very honest and clear that, I have created trauma to my own child because I haven't dealt with my own trauma. And that's the first step to healing. Admitting the fact that you have problems and understanding, okay, well, how can I do to move forward here? That is something that you have to think about. This is something that I'm taking this really seriously, because the nature of your own trauma bonds that you carry, you recreated the same past and the present with your own children now. Now, then what? And if your children are young, like my son is still 4, so he's still pretty young. I'm still working on this every single day, but it's about the nature of awareness. The more aware you are, the better chance you have the outcome that you want in the end. So when you're married with children, understand that your relationships needs to be worked on. Understand that your marriage needs to be cared for. And some of my guy friends have a difficult time even trying to reconnect with their wives, because their wives is so prone to dealing with their children that they don't really see that, their wives need attention too. The husband needs attention too. And I'm like, oh crap, that is so true. The nature of care. Yes, the husband, we still have this mindset where husbands are still the providers in the family. We still have that mindset where, wives still stay at home and care for the children. And I get that. But when it comes to intimacy, connectedness, and love, we have to be realistic in approach as well. That you need sometimes to maybe take it to a babysitter, give yourself a couple hours to be together. I don't know what it is that you guys need to do, but if you want the marriage to be sacred and safe and be able to protect that, understand the nature of what you both need and come to the common ground on that. Because sometimes you will have a problem down the road where it can create more conflict, and you don't want conflict. You want to be able to solve these things in the end. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I can know all the answers to this, but this is just one truth that I believe that any marriage can be salvaged if you're willing to put in the work and not being lazy about it and not putting your children in the middle of the fights that you have. You have a better chance of having that relationship where you can build and come to a common conclusion. But we have to be very honest, because women can be conniving. We can be manipulative, and we can create situations and circumstances in the outcomes that we don't want because of the fact that we manipulated the men in our lives. We got to be very honest about this. Okay, we don't like to be honest, but it's just knowing how we come across in many cases. We women tend to do that. I'm not saying all women are like this, but a lot of times we will do it just to get what we want. And my mother did it. I've done the same thing with my own ex. I'm like, oh shit, until I did the work. My mother is very good at this. Very manipulative, very conniving, very good at trying to get what she wants through manipulation. And I was just guilt tripping and shaming. And I'm like realizing that's not healthy. That's not how relationships going to work. So we have to be very honest and evaluate all this. This is why a lot of men have to be very careful who they get married to or why they get married to these people. And we women have to be much more loving and understanding and caring when it comes to our men. And this can go for same-sex marriage as well. I mean, depending who has more masculine side to the energy than the feminine side, You may, so there may also be role reversal as well. So I don't know. This can go both ways, but I've grown up with heterosexual parents, so I can only speak from this side of heterosexuality. But you can do man, or woman, whatever the case works for you, transgender. But whatever floats your boat, you have to be very honest about it. That honest evaluation does work. It does really help you see things that you have done something that was wrong. And you can say I'm sorry and apologize so many times to the point where your actions don't meet up with it, that you end up losing. You start losing this sense of integrity. And children need to be shown integrity in the end. How is your integrity being shown? How are you being accountable for your actions? Are you being accountable at all? So let's just try to put that into perspective in the end. All right. Anyways, I hope this video helps for those of you who are watching. Please subscribe to my channel. If you want to get in touch with me, you can do that too. My website link is down below. If you also want to read my friend's book, she also has a book that she has written. You can get the link down below for Amazon Kindle, or you can get a paperback. But it's up to you. I can give her the information and she can mail it out to you. But it's all knowing this. It's all knowing about this. I am sharing my own experience and all this. How I may do part 2 in this video because I think it will help. But it's just really understanding the nature of really seeing the facts. Understanding how your marriage can be salvaged if you're willing to put in the work, and both people are going to work, even if you need to go through therapy, whatever the case may be, to see it work. I mean, I'm working with one of my guy friends about this, and I've told him the situation that I've been through, hoping that maybe it will help him to see things and put things in perspective. Is this an easy thing? No, but it does help to really understand that when it comes down to it, it's about really trying to come together in agreement and understanding and setting boundaries and limits. Not really limits all the time, limits, but it's boundaries and certain things that you are not willing to accept. Understand why men leave, why men are not happy in relationships, and then we women are oblivious to the fact that, I think our husband's happy in the relationship. Fuck no, they're just not able to explain that to you, to the fact that they don't want to, they're not willing to share that with you because they don't want to make you unhappy. It's sometimes men who are codependent men often struggle with communicating their own emotions because of the fact that they don't know how to, without the woman reacting or getting angry, getting upset, getting their emotions getting in the way of the situation. So I have to be very, very clear on this. Are you the type of woman who's very emotionally mature? Because if that's the case, then you may have to read that book, Adult Children of Emotionally Mature Parents by Lindsay C. Gibson. That book helped me, and I was reading that book over and over again. I have a PDF form. If you want the PDF form, I may be able to send you the link. But understand that. Understand this. Emotional maturity in a relationship. Thinking logically, not always through emotions. Women are very emotional. But when it comes to logic, we have to be very honest about it. And men would like that. Men would like to see, would like women to see where they're coming from. Sometimes we have to step outside of the feminine energy, the passive side, come into the masculine a little bit to understand where they're coming from and logically think about things through. Get out of the right side of the brain. All right, come into the left a little bit more and put things into perspective. Anyways, I'm gonna get going, and I'll do a part 2 in this video. So I think this video will help anybody who's watching down the road. And I do believe that my videos will make a difference. So this is because it's about recovering it's about recovering within the self a lot of times. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys soon, and have a great day.